The reason why I was going to have Mike on, I saw his column on Bleacher Report where he talked about the locker room and how Donald Trump being elected president could affect a locker room. Or is it racially divided? Now, locker rooms get divided by women and money. It's rarely politics, but Mike pointed these things out today, and I wanted to have him on. Mike, good morning. Thanks for joining us. How would you summarize your article?
Always good to be with you. I would summarize it as locker rooms are just like the rest of America. And you're right in that locker rooms usually are divided by money and women. Sometimes both at the same time. But this is different. I mean, this election has been different, as you know. As everyone knows, it's a whole different ball game. And politics have always been a part of every locker room that I've covered, but it's been sort of a minor player. This has moved to the forefront because, like everyone else in America, there are just so many strong opinions, or most people in America, so many strong opinions about this election and the two people that were in it, that it seeped into the locker room. That this is not every locker room. This is not. I can't speak for everyone, but I think it's a pretty good representation of what's going on. That there's a lot of heated discussions, or in some cases, no discussions, which is kind of almost the same thing. And people just feel very strongly, and players feel very strongly. And one quick thing, I think fans don't get that players are very tuned into with the world around them, and not just sort of sitting back and just focusing on football. They look at everything. They hear all this stuff, and they have very, very strong opinions too. So it's a whole big mix that has led to some of this discussion in the locker room.
But it's one thing to say, all right, you voted for that guy, I voted for this guy. I don't know if we're looking at Rex Ryan differently, if his players do, if his African-American players do because he was a Trump supporter, or Bill Belichick voting for Donald Trump, what that means to his players. What's it mean for free agents? Do you want to play for Rex Ryan? Are we going to have a White House boycott by teams, by entire teams, not just players because of Donald Trump? So extrapolate this. It's one thing, once I go on the field, guys don't like each other, but you still play. I imagine that Richie Incognito is still going to block for Tyrod Taylor. They may disagree politically. So once you get on the field, that doesn't change. So where are we going with any of this, if we're going anywhere at all with this political dynamic?
No, you're right. Once the game starts, there's nothing. And even what I would say is there's not going to be some sort of rebellion, or there may be some interesting situations with the White House. That may be really interesting to watch. But I don't think there's going to be these. When I talk about division, I don't mean someone's not going to block for someone. It's more polls kind of show what happens with African Americans and whites, and when they talk about Trump, and that seeps into the locker room. It's not going to cause fistfights, and people aren't going to be throwing chairs at each other. But I do think it's going to cause people to look differently at one another. And when you look at how black people in general, African Americans in general, view Trump, it's not very favorable. And there's white players and white people who view Trump very positively. And those things have clashed. And they have clashed outside of locker rooms, and they clash inside locker rooms. That doesn't mean there's going to be brawls. It just means I do think you're going to have players, I already know this, who look at coaches like Rex Ryan or Belichick or Brady differently, not in any kind of way that they're going to express it or there's going to be any kind of mutiny, and they look at them differently. But when the games start, everyone plays hard, everyone does what they do. But I do think if you look at what's happening in America, this is playing out across America, and locker rooms are no different from our country.
The Dan Patrick Show, weekday mornings on Audience.